Hi everybody, try and get through this article very quickly. I've got to thank Carla Chase for sharing this on the Facebook group. So let's just jump straight in and have a look and see what we're looking at. Hopefully that's all working. 5 years today, I didn't watch Making a Murderer. I didn't know about it until March February, on a night out in Glasgow. My daughter was doing journalism at the time. And we went across to Glasgow, because that's where she was. Took her out for the night, spent some time with her, and so when she asked me, have I ever heard of Manitowoc? Have I ever heard of Stephen Avery? No. Would police ever frame somebody? I said, no, it's too much of a risk. Little did I know. Okay, so this is by Andy Thompson. There's one glaring error right at the start there, Andy. In December 2015, Making a Murderer debuted on Netflix. 10 years after Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey were convicted of the, I'm going to correct this and say 2005, killing of Teresa Holbach. The documentary was a major hit from the start, attracting millions of viewers who subscribed to the streaming service. The passage of a decade between the guilty verdicts and the release of the series hasn't diminished its appeal. Making a Murderer and its 2018 sequel, Making a Murderer 2, remain immensely popular today. As I discovered yesterday, as I say, going into town, an optician appointment, and I was asked by one of the people in the shop, what line of work do you do? And I said, well, I'm a peripatetic music teacher. What hobbies do you have? And I explained that I have a YouTube channel that looks at the case. And they said, oh, we watched that. We watched that. Are they still locked up? That's just ridiculous that those two are still locked up. But the impact has gone far beyond a mere recounting of the case. It has breathed life into legal efforts to either overturn the convictions of Stephen Brendan, order new trials, or grant clemency. It has brought national and international attention to how police interrogate and elicit confessions from juveniles. Brendan was 16 when he admitted his role in Teresa's murder, prompted law schools, ACULA, and the University of Utah included, to offer courses based on the series, has sparked interest in other true crime streaming documentaries such as The Staircase and The Keepers. In fact, that's the beauty of The Staircase and Making a Murderer. You get to see either Jerry Buting and David Rudolph in Amsterdam, or Steve Drizzen, Laura Nyrider, and David Rudolph in Sydney or Melbourne. And stirred a national debate on the quality of legal representation that poor or indigent defendants receive. But Making a Murderer has been reviled as well by people who have a vested interest. It has been characterized by its detractors as a one-sided TV show that has unnecessarily opened old wounds and subjected law enforcement officials and an entire community to undeserved scrutiny and ridicule. Jim Bray. I can tell Steve's guilty by the look in his eye. We're really going to listen to you, Jim. Oh, and guess what? Here's our good friend Robert Herman, who said it is one-sided and very biased. Former Manitrock County Sheriff Robert Herman said after Making a Murderer debuted on December the 18th, 2015, it has created a lot of problems and shed a negative light on Manitrock and law enforcement in general, which is totally wrong. No, Robert, I think it's just focused on certain members of the Manitrock County Sheriff's Department. I think you'll find Netflix and the show's producers have been sued by retired Manitrock County Sheriff's detective, crackerjack detective, by the way, one of the only people that could have possibly have found the key in Steve's bedroom, Andrew Colburn, whose defamation suit alleges he's been subject to worldwide ridicule, contempt, and disdain following the release of the series. Yes, Andy, you have received all of that. I can definitely vouch for that. You are a laughing stock. Right, let's come down next bit. The lawsuit states pertinent and significant aspects of Making a Murderer are not true as represented and are instead false and defamatory towards plaintiff and others. I would imagine that Netflix will be fighting this then. Material and significant facts known to the defendants were omitted and distorted. Not at all. Colburn also argued that the series falsely led viewers to the inescapable conclusion that he and other police officers planted evidence to frame Avery for the murder of Holbach. Yep, I think that's pretty true. You certainly did, Andy. A 25-year-old woman who was working as a photographer for Auto Trader magazine. She disappeared after going to the Avery salvage yard in Manitrock to take a picture of vehicle in late autumn. Oh, let's get the date right. 31st of October 2005. You can't get any later than that. In early 2020, a federal judge refused to dismiss the lawsuit against Netflix and the filmmakers and basically tried to wash his hands of the whole thing. Despite its critics, the series, which has won 4 Primetime Emmy Awards, continues to be widely watched. Last October, Parrot Analytics reported that Making a Murderer ranked third in the top 10 list of original digital series, with the highest increase in US demand. Oh, and there's the wonderful Sherry there. Academics and criminal experts say Making a Murderer has tapped into the public's intense interest in true crime shows. I think true crime has long been a popular genre of books and television for all sorts of reasons, but previously, most of the true crime that people could read about or watch was about, quote, catching the bad guys, so to speak, said Lindsay Malloy, Associate Professor of Forensic Psychology at Ontario Tech University. So, Canadian opinion. Only relatively recently have some of these documentaries and dramas focused on wrongful convictions, since, for example, the work of the Innocence Project started shedding light in the 1990s on the terrible miscarriages of justice that wrongfully convicted individuals have suffered. These stories of injustice and sometimes redemption are appealing, in my opinion, because they are more unexpected and shocking. We think that the legal system gets it right, or some people like to think that anyway. So when it goes wrong, we feel compelled to figure out why and how. And we want to see that injustice made right. Malloy said this perception is amplified in cases involving vulnerable individuals like Brendan Dassey, who was highly vulnerable due to his age and his intellectual limitations. You might want to only use one vulnerable then there, Andy. I also think that people see their sons, their students, their grandkids, etc. in Brendan. His vulnerability is extremely evident, and Making a Murderer allowed viewers to watch his videotaped interrogation unfold in real time in ways that were disturbing to most sensible people watching. Christine M. Sartecci, an associate professor of social work and criminology at Chatham University in Pittsburgh, said, Making a Murderer is appealing to viewers for several reasons. Part of the reason why it is so popular stems from the fact that it presents multiple, exceptional, compelling, and emotional stories in very detailed ways, she said. The first one being the initial story about Steve having spent 18 years in prison for a crime in which he was later exonerated. The second being Mr. Avery's, Steve's subsequent arrest for a murder. Well, it wasn't a second murder, for a murder 2 years after his release from prison. He wasn't wrongfully convicted for murder. It was attempted murder. I am not aware of another case quite like Steve's. The controversy surrounding Brendan's confession also has made a deep impression on those who have watched, Sartecci said. The interrogation interviews were extensive, something rarely seen in a documentary. The actual police interviews show the process, the machinations used by the police to produce a confession. Some legal experts argue that their particular interrogation style should be avoided so as to not produce false confessions. That's a good one. Yeah. Sartecci said Making a Murderer has revealed the public's fascination with major crimes. The unfolding of these real life stories is something that most people never experience in their own lives, she said. It allowed viewers to vicariously experience a real life thriller without personally having to experience one in real life. Joe Guaglione, a retired New York Police Department detective and a professor at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, expressed similar sentiments. People are sitting at home watching true crime shows. They can't get enough of it, he said. For some people, it's a hobby. It's a form of entertainment. Something about the American culture makes people want to absorb violence. Well, it's a draw for them. It's like a car wreck. People have to slow down and watch it. I think it's more than that. I think it's... We are appalled at what the people who are supposed to represent justice are allowed to get away with. Guaglione said people have always had an affinity for detective work, and watching true crime shows like Making a Murderer multiple times appeals to them. They're looking for that one thing they overlooked. You're right there, he said. Detective work really intrigues a lot of people. Guaglione isn't a fan of true crime programs on streaming services. He says, I don't watch these kinds of shows, he said. I've been to crime scenes and investigations, and when I see them depicted on TV, it has nothing to do with what I saw. Well, you're contradicting yourself. You've just said you don't watch it, and then you're saying that you have watched them. You know, if you've watched Making a Murderer, there was nothing that was made up. He's saying that being depicted, it was just footage that was shot at the time. So I don't quite see what you're getting at, Mr. Guaglione, who also says true crime shows often put police in a bad light to achieve a certain narrative. No, the police put themselves in a bad light and achieve a certain narrative. The producers frame things. No, they just film what happened when it happened. You can push people towards towards a certain outcomes. You can push people towards certain outcomes, I'm sure. That's the danger of shows like this. No. A load of baloney, Mr. Quaglione. You know, as I say, you're like Robert Herman, contradicting yourself. Robert Herman famously said, you know, not advised you that you know, it's one's making a murder, it's one-sided. I wouldn't recommend watching it. And when they asked him, have you watched it? He had to concede, no, he hadn't. He was judging it before he'd even watched it. Anyway, short and sweet. Just wanted to share that with you. Yeah, hi everybody. So yes, it did. It did escape my memory earlier that, of course, today is the 5th anniversary of the release of Making a Murderer. But as I say, I didn't watch it back then. I think I might be saying that the dude did. It was there were posters all around Southern California advertising this this new show that was coming on, this new documentary. And so I believe he did watch it right from the word go. Anyway, catch you all tomorrow. Almost 24 hours from now, I'm due to be having a chat with Pete Dassey. And I think Linda, I think you're able to join me along with Becca. So we'll give Peter a good roasting, asking him all about things in his neck of the woods. I'm going to say cheerio. Catch you all again soon. Bye for now.